Welcome back to Cryptid Mysterious. Today's encounter took place in the Dixie National Forest and comes to us by Trevor Gunderson. Let's get into it. I'm an old buzzard, and I make no bones about it. Both my father and my Uncle Dave are gone, God rest their souls, and I reckon that sooner or later the dirt will be covering me and my story. So I figured it high time to share it. Every year, the three of us would go on several hunts. I'm talking hunting, camping, and the whole shebang. We actually hunted quite a bit more, but these trips were planned getaways for the boys. I played the part of the boy at the time, but my father and uncle were the men. These hunts were always a great time for me, and my memories have kept me going for 99 years, counting as of last July. At the time, I was a young lad, but I could steady and fire a long gun, and that's all that mattered. One of the places we liked to go in the fall was Dixie National Forest Game Preserve. And as you know, I live in Florida now, and haven't been up in that neck of the woods in a long, long time. But at that time, which I want to say was 1950, plus or minus a few years, they held a deer hunt there from October 20th to the 30th. It was southern Utah's finest deer country, bar none. In fact, I still have my father's 5x5 hanging on my wall here in Florida. Just to give you an idea how much things have changed through the years, back then, you could get a guide for $5 a day. There were so many deer in there that the last time we hunted, 1,700 out of 2,000 hunters found their mark. You had to wear a red cap, and you could only shoot one buck with horns at least 5 inches long. On this trip, we were camping near Panguitch Lake. Forgive me if I tore up the name. And trust me when I tell you that this place felt as remote can be. Panguitch Lake, by the way, is Piote Indian. It means big fish. So it wasn't only the hunting that was good there. Now the name of the creek that I'm about to mention slips me, but it ran north to south right through the preserve, and hunting near it had provided us with more than a few bucks through the years. There were areas in this creek where golden green grasslands came from the fringe of the forest on both sides, and they were loaded with game trails. The deer would come out of the timber to eat and drink by the creek, and then retreat back into the forest. We used to set up in a blind at the edge of the forest early in the day and lay in wait for the deer to come out in the fields. Once out of the forest's cover, you had a wide open clear shot at your prey. We were in the blind and ready to roll on opening day as the sun was just lighting the horizon. Nothing happens quickly when you're on a hunt in this environment. The sun rises slowly and the deer move even slower. So we set up overlooking this field with the creek running through the middle of it. As some deer started to make their way out of the forest, the best bucks, by the way, are always bagged on the opener, so our expectations were high. About an hour into sunup, there were a decent amount of deer in the field, including a few bucks, but nothing worthy of a shot. We hadn't seen another red cap anywhere in the area either, which meant that we had the location to ourselves. The sun had just broken the horizon when just to our north, maybe 100 yards or so from our position, a doe came launching out of the timber, heading towards the creek at full speed, which sent everything in the field we'd been waiting on running in every direction. This doe was running like a hunter from a grizzly, and before we could answer why, a huge monster of a beast came running out after her, out of the timber, hot on her heels. This thing was gaining on her rapidly, and in no time, they disappeared into the timber on the other side of the field. Words cannot describe what we were feeling as we watched this unfold before our eyes. First of all, the run from the wood line to wood line had to be several hundred yards, which is in no way typical for a deer's running distance. I guess when you're about to be eaten, the things change. When the monster crossed the creek, it was already gaining on the doe, maybe 2 steps to 1. When the doe reached the creek, it had to run down into and out of the creek, continuing towards the forest. This monster cleared the creek in full stride, like a long jumper, without missing a step. It had to be a 40-foot leap. With just one move, it had cut the distance in half between itself and the doe. Although we saw and heard nothing after the 2 creatures went into the woods, I'm sure this monster got the doe. At the very least, the doe would have had a heart attack before it would have gotten away. That's how fast this hairy beast was running. About 15 minutes after this sighting, we walked over to where the 2 had come out of the forest. As we stood there looking over the path that it made through the field, you could make out the individual areas where its feet had impacted the grass. My dad had paced out a few of the strides with his own steps, and it was a 5-to-1 ratio. In other words, it took 5 of my dad's steps to make up 1 of this thing's, which meant it was covering about 15 feet or more per step when running. I didn't think that was possible for anything living, especially that large, to run that fast. At the time, my father and uncle were estimating that it had to have been well over 10 feet tall, based on the height of the grass and the appearance of the larger deer in the field. Needless to say, we'd called off the hunt for the day and went back to camp, somewhat stunned by what had happened. This was, by the way, before any conversations were being had about Bigfoot. We had no idea what we had seen. It was simply a giant hairy beast running on 2 legs. We never thought about running anyway. But it had it come at us, we had 3 big bore rifles at the ready. This creature made the biggest grizzly look like a dwarf in comparison. As it ran, its hair, which was very long, was flying behind it. I distinctly remember its head was tucked down well below its shoulders, and its arms were moving so fast it was almost a blur to the eyes. I don't think it took 20 seconds for it to cover the open field in the creek, which was a considerable distance indeed. The upper arms of the creature looked like a large man's thigh, and I could only shake my head at thinking about what kind of strength this thing possessed. Well, there you have it, folks. Bigfoot in the Dixie National Forest. Any of y'all been out there, seen anything, heard anything funny? If you've had an encounter with a Bigfoot, or any kind of cryptid for that matter, throw me an email. I'd love to hear it. cryptidmysterious@gmail.com. And if you haven't subscribed already, I'd greatly appreciate it if you hit that button for me. And to all you who have subscribed, I greatly appreciate you hanging out with me. We'll see y'all in the next one.